G'day and welcome to Not the Farmer's Wife podcast. I'm CJ Steedman and I'm not the farmer's wife, I'm the farmer. I'm also a mum to MJ and OJ and a full-time off-farm worker. And like most farmers, I'm able to farm with the help of my family and my partner, who I call the handy helper. On Mojo Homestead, we grow chickens, goats, cows and bees, and we do it using regenerative agriculture and holistic management practices. If, like me, you love all things farming and homesteading, then we'd love to have you along for the ride. So let's get farming. G'day everyone and welcome to episode 99 of Not the Farmer's Wife. I am in absolute shock that we've made it to 99. When I first started this podcast, I did not think, I didn't know how long it would last. I was hoping I would last this long, but I wasn't 100% sure. Anyway, I have some super exciting news this week. Even though we have already discussed a lot of things on this podcast, we're going to this year go over a few things. And, over the last 2 years, nearly 2 years that I've been doing this, some of the information that I've got has changed. Some of the information that I have to give to others has changed. And that's through experience of doing the things that I do. So I have done up a plan for the next 12 months. And that plan revolves around the fact that I have always held this long desire to write books. And I am no writer. I have written this one. I've written a book. I've finally finished my book, my first one. But I intend to keep writing through this year. And the books that I'm writing, they're only short books. They're not super encyclopedias. They are not novels. They're nonfiction. And they're writing about the things that I talk about on the podcast. I thought we talk about it so much, why not put it in a book format? Not everybody wants to listen to a podcast, so that's what we're doing. So this week we are talking about chicken processing, even though we have already talked about it before, but the book that I'm going to share with you now, I did try and do this before and it didn't want to share properly, but hopefully this is going to share the screen with you. Is Ditch the Store, From Brooder to Plate, the step-by-step guide to raising chickens for meat. And that has, I finally finished it. It's taken me 2 months, which is a bit longer than what I actually planned for it to take. But we're done. I've finished it. Now, in finishing it, obviously I have to get a little bit of editing done. I've done a self-edit. It's going to be edited. I'm paying somebody to edit it for me because I am no writer. I don't even type my books. What I do is turn on voice recording and record them and then go through and edit. Because if I had to sit still at a computer and type the entire time, I'd probably go a little bit spare. And I'm always up on the move anyway, so it's easier just to voice record everything and download it that way. It does require a bit of checking because, voice recording doesn't always pick up my Australian accent. Sometimes it gets a bit wonky and I get weird words. Like even Mojo Homestead, it comes up as Major Homestead. Okay, whatever. But I have done it. I have completed the book. So this week we're going to talk about what's in the book because, like I said, over the years, some of the things that I have always thought and that I've always practiced have changed. And certainly going through this process over the last 2 years of raising meat birds has given me a different perspective on raising meat birds on my own. I had previously helped my parents to go through the process of raising and dispatching meat birds, but that was from a teenager's perspective and also not from the perspective of the person where the buck stopped. And when you are the one where the buck stops, it does change your perspective just a little bit, and it does change how you try and do things and the kinds of things you need to think about. So we're just going to run through it. It may not be a super long episode this week. I don't have the handy helper to take me off track. He's at work today. But we'll go through and have a chat about the kinds of things that I think you need to know coming into processing chicken. And what I would say to you is if you're out there listening or watching, because I'm recording on YouTube again, if you're out there listening or watching and you have tried processing your own meat birds, let me know. I'm really interested to see just how many people are actually doing it. We did it and, it's hard to say you love something like that, processing your own meat, but certainly we enjoyed the experience and certainly enjoyed the benefits and the rewards that came out of that process. So from that perspective of having fresh, healthy meat, for the family, it was definitely a win-win for us. So, um, yeah, hit me up if you have processed birds, or if you're thinking about processing birds, hit me up. I am possibly going to have a giveaway next week. So if you're listening, make sure you listen in to episode 100, because I'm hoping to be able to give something away for free to a listener who has to listen and do something, and then I'll give something away. So episode 100 next week. So why do we process? Why does processing even matter? Well, it comes down to wanting healthy meat that you know the backstory of. And I think as people, and I always say I never like to get into that whole conspiracy theory thing, but after COVID, people started to question what was going into their body a lot more than what they did before COVID. Now, there was a group of us who questioned it before COVID. I certainly was part of that and was very much interested in raising my own meat, drinking raw milk, having pasture-raised eggs. That was my life before COVID. But I've noticed since COVID, so many people are much more interested in what is going into their food before their food goes into them. And there's a big carnivore movement now where people want properly raised meat because they're living almost completely from meat sources. Some people are living completely from meat sources. A lot of people are doing more like me, which is more of a ketovore kind of system, where I eat mostly meat or animal based, but I still include some berries and some vegetables in amongst that, but mostly a veggie based, meat based rather, not veggie based. And so, but even with vegetables, even people growing their own gardens, there's talk now around people traveling to other countries where things like Roundup are banned. Like in Italy, Roundup isn't used, and they're eating wheat products in these countries. And when they eat the wheat products in these countries, they're not having the kind of gluten reaction or gluten sensitivity that they have when they're in Australia or England or the US, where Roundup is legally allowed to be used. In fact, it seems to be almost encouraged. And people are starting to notice that. They're starting to go, hang on a sec, what is happening to my food before it goes into my body is making a difference to how my body reacts to that food, which I think is great that people are paying attention to their food source. I often say I wish farming was a job that kids put down on their, what they want to be when they grow up kind of thing. And I think farmers don't get anywhere near the recognition for the work that they actually do. Oh, I've got the yawns today. Sorry, folks. It's late in the afternoon and it's been a long day. So I think that's the main thing, is that why people are starting to move towards that processing food at home themselves is because they want to know what's gone into the food. And the good bit about raising your own chickens is you can choose to raise chickens that have no medicated food going in. I use medicated food up until the 3-week mark because there are a couple of illnesses that can really, really heavily affect young chicks. But after the 3-week mark, I don't feed medicated feed to them. And the reason I don't feed medicated feed to them is that the half-life is about 2 to 3 weeks. And by the time I process the bird, any medicated feed that was in them is out of their system by the time they're processed, which means that I can hand on heart say my meat that I'm feeding to my family is meat that has not been treated with chemicals that, even though people say, oh, it's safe to eat, we know it's safe to eat, you kind of have to wonder, how safe is it when some of these products have only been on the market for 10, 20 years. We don't really know what the long-term effects of them are. And again, I don't want to come across like a conspiracy theorist, but I think it's good to question. There's no harm in saying, why are we eating food that has that chemical added to it? I mean, the whole Bovea 10 thing, that blew up. And that came down to people going, well, hang on a sec, I don't know that I want an additive given to my animal food supply. that I'm then going to eat, and I don't know what the reaction it's going to have on my body. So people are really starting to question that, and that's why home processing matters. So if it's something that you're interested in doing, then what I can say to you is it's not as difficult as what you think it is. People think the hardest bit is the actual dispatching of the chickens. I have to be honest, the dispatching bit does not bother me at all. And there's a few reasons why, which I'll go into, but I also go into a lot more in the book, and the course will be coming out. So I'll have a course and a book coming out at the same time. And they'll go into a bit more detail about why I don't think it's that bad. There are other parts of the processing which I find far worse than the actual dispatching. But at the end of the day, we raised a lot of chickens healthily without additives in their food. We raised them humanely and dispatched them humanely. And I think there was a cost benefit. And I did work out on a previous episode. I'll find it out for next week. There was a previous episode where I sat down and worked out the cost per bird, and it was so much cheaper than you could buy it in the shops. I think it was so much cheaper. I remember thinking it doesn't really matter whether it's cheaper because it's healthier, but I still think it was cheaper. Anyway, but the other thing is that you can ditch the store. You can get away from the supermarket and go, I am going to supply my own food, which I think for a lot of people after COVID in particular were like, I don't want to be reliant on a supermarket. I mean, the egg situation, Handy Helper and I used to joke about it. We had a couple of customers who had been buying eggs from us prior to COVID, and we used to joke with them and say, don't lowball us, we know what we've got. You almost felt like a drug dealer, because people were ringing us up and going, hey, have you got eggs? And I'd be like, no, I'm sorry, I've got customers that I have been my long-time customers that I've been supplying eggs to. If I have spare eggs, I'll let you know. But at the moment, I don't have any spare eggs. People were getting really frustrated. It was like, and I think I saw a skit that a guy did where he was like, I've got my C bombs, chicken bombs, and don't lowball me on the price kind of thing. And it did get like that during COVID. People got really antsy about the fact they couldn't get a hold of eggs. So being able to walk away from a supermarket and say, no, I can provide that for my family myself, is a huge step up, I think. So you'll never convince me that home processing and home growing food is worse for you than it would be better for you. It's always going to be better. Now, the one thing, like I said, the humane processing, and I've got a little list here, that's why I'm glancing over to the side. I've got a little list to make sure I don't forget anything. In the book, I go through humane processing, and it's probably the question that I get asked the most, which is, how do you cope with actually dispatching the chickens? And like I said, it's such a small part of the process. Plucking chickens, and they call it evisceration, I call it gutting. Gutting chickens is probably, certainly it's a messier job, and it takes a lot longer, and your back starts to ache after a while. The dispatch is really quick. If you do it right, if you do it humanely, it is super, super quick. And honestly, once you've done one or two, you would be surprised that you get into a process with it and just go for it. And I think, I'm not a religious person, and I do discuss it in the book that some people like to say a prayer or a blessing over animals that they're dispatching. And I can remember reading years ago, my family's heritage is Scottish. And I can remember reading years ago about Scottish hunters saying a prayer over animals that they would, like if they were hunting a deer and they killed a deer, they would say a prayer or a blessing to say to the animal, thank you for providing us with nourishment via your meat. If you are religious, if you are the kind of person who feels a very spiritual connection to your food, then being able to do that, that's a really personal choice. And I don't think anybody should ever, hassle you about doing that. A couple of times in the past, if I'm dispatching something that, I'm doing it a favour, I will have a little chat and a little moment to myself about it. But for meat purposes, I tend not to. And that's only because once I get into that cycle of and for us, it is a whole day event. Once we get into that cycle, we're just head down and focused on what we're doing. So we don't really think about it like that. The main thing you have to think about on that day is your preparation and setup. What is it? Proper preparation prevents piss poor performance. Somebody told me that years ago. Setting up before you start is vital, and having all the right equipment already there. You don't want to be halfway through processing a chook and go, oh shit, I forgot the thermometer in the water for the scalding, so I don't know what the temperature of the scalding water is. Or, oh God, I don't have a hose with a proper spray end on it for washing down feathers or washing down guts or washing my hands or blood. You don't want to be running around doing that halfway through the process. So there's a couple of things that you can get set up beforehand. And one of the things I'm hoping to do down the track is actually build a trailer, and the trailer will have on it a scalding pot, kill cones, a plucking station, buckets that are built in. So you could literally hire out a trailer and stand there, do your process, and then wash down the trailer, hand the trailer back, and you don't have to worry about the equipment. Because some of the equipment does add up. But because the handy helper is such a handy helper, there is so many things that you can DIY. So don't think you have to spend a fortune if this is what you're planning to do. So you want probably an outdoor area. I wouldn't do it inside unless I had a really good setup for like a cool room or something like that. If you were dispatching other animals and you've already got a cool room with a butcher's shelf and everything set up, then maybe you would do that. But for the chickens, I generally do it outside because it can get a bit messy and there's a lot of water involved. But I set up a table that is a big table that I can sterilise. So mine is actually an outdoor glass table, like an old patio table, that we don't use as a patio table because we have a beautiful big timber one. But the glass top means I can sterilise it. I can put disinfectant all over it, which is awesome. It's also got a hole in the middle, and the hole in the middle means that no water sits because all the water runs down and through the hole. So I don't have to worry about scraping water off all the time. Now I have a tub that I sit under that hole to collect water, so that bloody gutsy water goes into that. But having a table for the actual disassembly process is what you need there. A kill cone, you definitely need a kill cone. And I will post all this through the week. If you keep an eye on the social medias, I'll post some of the things that we use. But it's a metal shaped cone that you feed the chook into head first. Once a chook goes upside down and goes head first, they pretty much go to sleep. The blood rushes to their head and it kind of renders them semi-unconscious. And anybody that's handled chickens for lice, like when you delouse them, the best way to delouse them is to hold them by the legs head down because they spread their wings out nice and easy. You can get all the lice powder in there. You can check the bird and make sure everything's done right. And then when you tip it back up, it takes a few seconds and the blood rushes out of its head again and it comes back to life. It's not dead hanging upside down. It's just kind of asleep. Unconscious is probably the best way of putting it. They're very much still alive and will be still alive until you cut their jugular. Now, there are other ways of dispatching chickens. We find that the quickest, simplest and easiest way to do at home. So the kill cone, and we have a bucket under that to collect everything because there is a lot of blood that comes out of chickens and it pumps out really quick. So you want a bucket up close to the bottom of that kill cone so it doesn't spray everywhere. Then you want a pot, a large pot. We use a 20 litre with a thermometer in it, hot water, and I think the temperature's got to be about 60 degrees Celsius. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit, 140 maybe in Fahrenheit. I can't remember. So 60, it can't be that much, about 120 maybe, but 60 degrees Celsius. So it's hot enough. I can put my hand in 60 degrees Celsius water, but that's because I'm a milking person and my hands are in and out of hot and cold water all the time. Because OJ helps us when we do our dispatches, I have big rubber gloves that he wears so that if he gets hot water on his hands, he's not going to burn himself. And what we found is a quick little dash of Dawn dishwashing detergent helps loosen the feathers a bit in the scalding process. So you want that set up we have it on a gas burner. It's just an old gas barbecue that we had and we don't use it for barbecuing our food anymore. So we just set it up for that. And then you want your plucker. Now, you can either hand pluck or mechanically pluck. I have done both. I hate hand plucking. I fucking hate it. Like anybody that does hand plucking, oh my God, I take my hat off to you. You are a braver and more conscientious person than I am. The Handy Helper built me a homemade plucker. And if you go to our TikTok channel, Mojo Homestead TikTok, you will see a video of the plucking machine. And people freak out about it because it looks so like full on. But it was basically a washing machine that we bought rubber fingers, these little rubber fingers that go into the side of the machine off Amazon. Handy helper stuck all the rubber fingers in. He then got a cement mixer motor. So an old cement mixer that he didn't use anymore, got the motor off it and put a belt on it and secured the washing machine tub to a table, to a little square table. And the belt from the cement mixer turns our plucker. And that pulls all the feathers off. And when I say all the feathers, no plucking machine is perfect. There's always going to be a few stray ones. But oh my God, compared to hand plucking, hand plucking is like my most hated job. It was a job that I got stuck with as a kid on the farm. The kids always did the plucking, and Dad would chop the head off a chook and he'd come and hang it up on the clothesline, and we would stand there with a garbage bin underneath us and pluck all these feathers out, and you'd be there forever. It was a nightmare. So having a plucking machine is definitely the preference if you can. Now, they are expensive to buy, but I believe in most places these days you can hire them as well. And that's what I'm saying. If I can get a trailer made up with all of the correct equipment on it and hire it out to people, that would be awesome, because then you could just hire the trailer, do your dispatch for the day, because we usually spend half a day doing it, and then give the trailer back. So then evisceration or gutting, that's the messy job, and that's what you want the table for, that you can disinfect. You want a good chopping block that you can also disinfect. You want a good sharp knife. Now, you have to be real careful, because the good sharp knife cuts you as much as the chook. And I tend to not use gloves to do it. Some people are really paranoid about it and use gloves. I don't have the dexterity in my fingertips to know when I've cleaned everything out of the carcass. So I tend to do it without gloves and just wash my hands a lot afterwards. And I wear a very big, thick rubber apron, because you get covered in water. Oh, and gumboots. You get covered in water, you get covered in guts. There's things you can use to help you. Like there's a tool that you can buy off Amazon where it's to help remove the lungs out of a chicken carcass, which I've never bothered to buy. You could use a fork just as easily, but it's just a long thing with a serrated kind of round circle on the end, and you can hook it into the carcass to pull the lungs out, because the lungs are the hardest bit to get out. So there's some tools that you might want to look at. And an esky or a cooler bin that you can fill up with cold water and ice, because the really important bit is once you've killed, depulked, depulked is like the opposite of plucked. Anyway, once you've plucked and gutted the carcass, you need to cool it, and you need to cool it and let it relax. And I learned this the hard way from the first time. The first time, 12 hours later, I'm like, I'm cooking this chook. This is great. We killed it 12 hours ago. Now it's in the oven. It was so tough. It was horrendously tough. You need to, like with all animals, I don't think people realise how long cattle hang for in a cool room before they're actually processed for us to eat. You need to let the birds sit for between 24 and 48 hours in order to allow all the muscles to relax. And once they relax, then you'll end up with a beautiful tender bird. So don't rush the process. If you're killing chooks that morning to eat dinner that night, like you used to see in the old Hollywood movies, where they go out, chop the chook's head off, and then you see them 5 minutes later cooking chicken. No, it would have been as tough as tough. It would have been horrible. So if you have a cool room, fantastic, use that. If you don't, an esky, we have a large esky that we use. We put blocks of ice and water in it, and we leave the birds in there, just making sure that the temperature stays below 40 Fahrenheit, which is 4 degrees Celsius. There you go, I know that one. So making sure it stays below 4 degrees Celsius, because you want the meat to stay chilled. Meat in Australia left out, it won't be very good for much longer. So you want to keep it at that chilled rate, but you want to keep it at that chilled rate for 24 to 48 hours before you bag it up and put it in the freezer, or before you attempt to cook it. So what's the best thing you can do when you are actually going through the process? Stay calm. Relax, stay calm. Don't be rushed. Make sure that if there's kids issues that are happening that day, that is not the day to do it. If you've got an inquisitive dog who you can't lock away from where you are, that is not the day to do it. You want no interruptions. You want no phone calls coming through, nothing from work that you have to answer, no kid emergencies. Our kids help us with the process, so any kid emergencies, they're there with us anyway. You don't want any animal emergencies. So if you've got something coming up like kidding season or something like that, don't plan your day of dispatching and processing for when you've got kids due, because you can't be running off in the middle of it. It's just the way it works. And I think one of the really important things is to get a game plan with everybody. So the handy helper and I and the two kids, my two kids, MJ and OJ, they help us out with it. And when we do it, everybody has a role to play. The handy helper has taken over the dispatch role. Once he got in the swing of it, once he knew what he was doing, he has taken to the dispatch role like nothing else. And he also does a really good job helping with cleaning up. He looks after the plucking machine as far as in between plucking. He will clear any excess feathers out of the bottom of it just so that it's a bit cleaner, like we're not constantly having build up of feathers in there. OJ helps out with the scalding. He has got that down pat. He puts on the rubber gloves. He knows he's got to watch the temperature and make sure it stays at that constant temperature. He dunks, and he stands there and counts, like he's 30 seconds at a time kind of thing. And some people say, oh, just dunk for like 10 seconds. No, I can tell you right now, this is one of the things I learned the hard way, is that when people say, oh, you don't want to cook the bird in the water. No, it's at about 60 degrees. You're not going to cook the bird unless you leave it in there for minutes. We dunk for about 30 seconds, pull it out, check a feather. If a feather comes out easy, it's ready to pluck. Now, it's never happened in that first 30-second dunk. It's usually about 3 dunks before the feathers are coming out easily. So about a minute and a half. And that's not in there the whole time for a minute and a half. It's dunking for 30 seconds, bringing it out, testing, back in again. Once the pluck is ready, then OJ brings it over to the plucking machine, and that's where I jump in. And I will hose, cold water hose, while it's in the plucking machine, because that just helps the feathers come out a bit quicker. And from there, I take it. Now, MJ is not a fan of dispatch, but she's fine with processing. So she actually helps me by standing at the table at the disassemble station, and she will open lids on buckets. She will pick up things like hearts and livers and heads and feet and put them in the waste bucket, and hearts and livers in the keep bucket, and guts in the waste bucket, and feathers that come out. She'll help me pull any extra feathers off and things like that. And basically she keeps the area clean so that I can just keep processing as quickly as I can. And once you get into a real rhythm with it, it goes quick. Like all of a sudden you look up and you go, oh, 2 hours is gone and we've done 20 birds. Awesome. I don't think we did 20 in 2 hours, but it was close to that. As we've gotten better at it, we've gotten much, much quicker at it. Now, obviously DIYing certain equipment is, I think a valid thing to do. If you're half handy and you can make your own plucker, go for it. There are other things that you can't really skimp on. And one of those things is your knives. Make sure you have sharp knives. Make sure you have really sharp knives for the dispatch, because that is the only way to do it humanely. And the handy helper and I have only had one occasion where we picked up the wrong knife and went to dispatch, and it was a mess, and I had to use my boning knife to dispatch because the knife was blunt. We stopped. It was like anybody that's done emergency action drills, stop. And I spent the next 10 minutes sharpening his knife on a sharpening stone, to the point where he then proceeded to cut his own hand on the knife because it was so sharp. But a sharp knife is vital. So make sure you have good equipment. If the knife hasn't been sharpened in a while, sharpen it the day before, and give it a test run on something and see how sharp it is. You want a sharp knife. And I find that a better quality knife is easier to sharpen. Cheapo knives just don't sharpen the same way, so get a good quality one. It's one of those things where you're better off. Kill cones, you can make a kill cone out of a plastic bucket. You just cut the end off it and then turn it in like it as a cone. So you would pull the one end of it tighter than the other end so that it forms a funnel, and then screw it into place. Use something to attach it so that it stays screwed into place. But honestly, buying one off Amazon or somewhere like that, they're not that expensive. I think the ones we looked at were between 30 and 50, I want to say, and that's Australian, so that's much cheaper in US dollars. All the other stuff, you're not going to spend a fortune on. Aprons, I got a good rubber one. It was still like $12 for a good rubber one. Gumboots we already had, obviously. The rubber gloves, I think I paid $20 for the rubber gloves, but they were so worth it. They're so thick, and I actually use them for soap making as well. So, they're good in that respect. The old pot we use is an old honey pot, like a wax melting pot that I had, the 20-litre one. And that's what we use to dunk the birds in. So, yeah, and a thermometer off the side, which, you can pick up pretty cheap. And otherwise, apart from that, we just use disinfectant. So I will use bleach on things. I don't like dunking the birds in bleach. I know that in the commercial butchers situations, they're, from what I've heard, I've not worked in one, what I've heard is that they have like a bleach bath that they put the carcass through to make sure that there's nothing yucky attached to it still. I don't like to do that. I think I don't really want bleach on my food, but the surface that I'm fixing my food on, I'm happy to bleach that. So I'll bleach it, give it a quick rinse with water, and then process the next one. Anyway, that is pretty much it. So the book basically has all of that, but in a lot more detail, and the pictures to show you how to do things. And there are a lot of pictures in there. I think there's only one picture in there that's not one of mine, and that was because I was trying to find really good quality images of different breeds. But every other picture in the book is 100% from the farm here. And like I say, it's about to get edited, and once it gets edited, hopefully by next week, I'll be able to say, guys, it's available. Now, for my listeners, and this is for my listeners and followers on Mojo Homestead only, if you would like, and this obviously is being recorded end of January, so if you're listening to it well after January, you probably missed out. If you would like to be a reviewer for my book, which I would love to have some people have a look at it and go through it and tell me if there's something that they don't understand or something that I haven't explained very clearly, I would love to know that. If you would like to be a reviewer, please send me a message at CEEJAY, the number 8, at mojohomestead.net. I am going to offer to give you a copy of the book, maybe a Kindle version or an electronic version, but I'm hoping to be able to give a couple of actual paperback versions of the book out on the proviso that you are able to review it and that you are willing to write up a proper review to let other people know what the book's like and what are the good bits, what are the bad bits, what bits don't work, but also so you can let me know so that I can always revise things if there's something in there that really doesn't work. So if you are listening and you would like a copy, then please send me an email and I will do what I can. But next week, there might be a little bit of a giveaway as well. So if you're listening next week, you might be lucky enough to actually get a copy no matter what. No returns, no need for review, although all reviews would be lovely and very nice. So I'm also going to post through the week and say, all right, who out there is processing their own birds, and what do you find? What are your things about processing that you love, that you hate? Is there special tools that you've found that you just love? Are there things that you wish you'd known about and nobody told you about? Because certainly the first couple of times we went through it, we had that kind of feeling where we're sitting there going, we don't know whether we're doing the right thing. I'd done it as a kid, but that was years ago. And like I say, it's different when you're in charge, when the buck stops with you. When you're a kid and you're just helping out your parents, it's a little bit different because somebody else is running the show. Somebody else is saying what needs to be done and when and where and how. But for me, the first time I did it, which was 2.5, 3 years ago, it was hard because I was sitting there going, holy shit, this is me doing it. And nobody's running the show. I'm it. The buck stops with me. If there's a question, everybody's going to come to me. So was there something that you didn't know about that you wish you did? I'd love to hear it. And I think that is it for today. Oh, look at that, 34 minutes. Oh my God, this is a quick episode. Anyway, next week is 100 episodes. And before I go, given that I have a little bit more time, so over the next 12 months, each month I'm going to have a target of writing another book. Oh, I'm putting it out there. Now that I've put it out there, I kind of have to do it. So each month I want to do a focus on a particular thing that you can grow in order to step away from your supermarket. Grow, raise, or make in your own home. And so some of the things that we'll be discussing will be things like milking goats, beef cattle, milking cows, beekeeping, making soap, making other cleaning products, sourdough bread, cheeses. There's some of the things that we're going to be discussing. Next month is going to be focused all about eggs. So, and I know we've discussed eggs before, but there will be a book in a month. I can't believe I've said that. Now I have to do it. I need to start writing tonight or recording tonight. But keep in the loop. If you're not already following us on Mojo Homestead on the socials, go and follow us there. Because I'm in Australia, TikTok's not getting banned for me. And I'm hoping for my US friends that TikTok is not getting banned, because I know a lot of people who actually have businesses they're running on TikTok. And it would be terrible for you guys to lose the business that you've built up. That just does my head in, why anybody would close down something that is helping small businesses. Because, you know, when you buy from a small business, you're not adding to a corporation. You're helping mum, dad, kids, schools, communities. So why close off a small business? It's just nuts. But yes, keep in the loop for all the social medias so that you can do that. If you want to join our newsletter list, don't forget, go to www.mojohomestead.net/launch. And I think it's launched still because I've changed websites. And you can jump on the newsletter list there, and there's a couple of freebies there for you. Jump on the newsletter list, and once you're on the newsletter list, you'll get a newsletter each week letting you know what we're up to and what we're doing. And it would be lovely to have you there. If you've been listening to this podcast for a little while, I would ask really, really big favour, go and leave a review at Spotify. I'm hosted on Spotify now. I'm not on Kajabi, and it's been hard to get I had a lot of people, jumping on randomly and listening, and I don't feel like I'm getting that traction with Spotify yet. So certainly if you've got 5 minutes to spare, I would love it if you could leave a review, even if it's just a couple of words and 5 stars, because then other people will be able to find it, because Spotify have an algorithm, and when you leave a 5-star review, it gets pushed out to more people, so more people will find it. Anyway, that is it for me. Under 40 minutes without the handy helper. Woo woo. I'll talk to you all next week. Bye for now. Thank you so much for listening. From all of us at Mojo Homestead, we really hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you did, I ask just one small favour. Please subscribe and leave a review. Reviews help small podcasts like mine be more visible, so more people will know about us and be able to listen in. And don't forget to head over www.mojohomestead.net/launch and check out our freebies. We love helping families start their homesteading journey. Remember, life's too short for store-bought eggs.